Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma. I'm sitting here licking my wounds after a 24-19 loss. Pittsburgh Steelers losing in Cleveland on Thursday Night Football, joined by probably an equally bitter gentleman over here to my side, my colleague and friend, one Mr. Brian E. Roach. Brian, I'd ask how you're doing, but I have a pretty good feeling I already know.
You do. And plus it annoys me that they had to, go ahead and make the crescendo the end of my birthday crap.
A happy birthday to Brian here. Happy 80th to you, my friend. And Brian just said I was number 1 or number 11. He may have given me the double bird there.
I double birded you.
I was double birding the TV screen. I did not go to Cleveland, which I'm always happy for, by the way. It's the Baghdad, Iraq of the United States. So what a miserable place. What miserable weather. Obviously, weather is the great equalizer, my friend. I'm going to try and make this show not a show of excuses because the Steelers squandered plenty of opportunities to have this game where they let it go. But there were also a lot of things that could have went differently. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. And at the end, when you don't control your own business, you don't take care of that business, you, like you said, they were leaving the door open for the Browns to stay in it.
For sure, 100%. That I agree with the theme of this is not an excuses show because there's not really any good excuse. They just played a inadequate game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want to say there's something that's interesting, and I was just telling you the common denominator between the Steelers losing to the Indianapolis Colts, Dallas Cowboys, and now the Cleveland Browns. Do you happen to know what that is?
All those teams start with C or D or B. They all begin in the beginning of the alphabet.
They all end in, all the mascot names end in S. In fact, that's a pretty, that's an interesting trivia question. I heard it on the radio many years ago. If you take the 4 major sports, of course, Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, and NHL, how many teams don't end in an S? And, there's a couple of them in baseball. But the common denominator here for this trivia question, this isn't the crap on this young man, but this is a hint. He keeps you in games because he makes some amazing plays. And there's one I'm going to gripe about toward the end of this game, but it's Alex Highsmith. Alex Highsmith did not participate in any fashion, inactive for all 3 of the Steelers' losses. Something to be said when the Steelers lose one of their linebackers, particularly an edge rusher. We saw that many years ago when they started 11-0 and lost Bud Dupree. You've seen it when Lamar Woodley was on the shelf back in the day, and then they were trying to replace him or James Harrison. But, you've got weather. We've got a 2-win Cleveland Browns football team. And you and I sat here back in August and made predictions. We're riding pretty high because the Steelers, they got 8 wins, baby. But for most of the onlookers, most of the people that were on Amazon Prime, which ran pretty flawless compared to Netflix and the Paul and Tyson fight, which still worries me about Christmas Day. I think I'll be in Pittsburgh for Christmas Day, though, despite the grumblings of some family members.
I've been vetoed. I'm not allowed to go on Christmas Day.
I don't know. People are automatically disqualify the Steelers as this is Mike Tomlin. This is the way he plays against bad teams, et cetera, et cetera. And I digress. This is number 1. We've said the Cleveland Browns from the get-go on the road in Cleveland Thursday night following a Baltimore Ravens game that should be physical, that ended up being physical as it was close game. That's tough sledding. Now you add a blizzard and you take Deshaun Watson out and give Jameis Winston, who, my goodness, Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit, shame on you guys. Jameis Winston, the love affair with him last night and even through this morning with some of the national media. Oh, he's so back. He threw 219 yards, no touchdowns and an interception. And he only took the 1 sack. He had a 76 quarterback rating. Yeah, he ran in that one touchdown that I guess I'll go back. I've already got him up. That this young man absolutely got mugged and should have had a sack. You see him take a straight beeline angle past that. It was a Fitty, the guy who was playing out of position at left tackle. You just see Herbig straight line speed and get grabbed on this Jameis Winston touchdown run. And it's just sad because it's like, if you end it right there, that's it. It's probably ball game right there, and it doesn't end up being the ball game, unfortunately.
Yeah, they, as you said, I don't want to put anything on the refs because, I've always asked for one thing, right? Consistency. Here's what they were doing last night. They were consistently not calling anything. So I'm not going to complain. They were consistent, at least, in the fact that they were going to ignore all penalties, basically, no matter how egregious, except for some reason, false starts and holding on the defense. I don't know, but whatever.
Holding on the defense.
Calling holding. They weren't going to call holding offensively, period.
No offensive holding on either side of the ball. So that's a good point. That's a good point. That's one, and pass interference is the other. So the big one was like Herbig and hands to the face on the 2-point conversion, I believe, with Cam Hayward. Or no, it was the Nick Chubb run at the end. It was the final touchdown. So if you go back and watch it and you think we're just crying spilled milk, take a look at the reaction of both of the Steelers defenders on this play. Nick Herbig on the Winston run on the 4th down. The tackle comes out and literally, Brian, this is all he does is he puts his arm out like a clothesline and grabs him. You see speed and the guy kind of stutter and you see him yank. You see Herbig literally flinch backwards from this, and then the guy just split second lets him go. I understand the officiating. They're cold. It's snowy. It's hard for them to see too. They have to decide if players are...
They're bad at their jobs anyway. So,
slipping,
they're just
falling,
bad.
But my goodness, you mean to tell me in a game, I'm trying to put this on the Steelers too, in a game with Dan Moore, who's the turnstile that he was with Myles Garrett, you mean to tell me there was no holding on the Steelers offensive line either? Like that's, so you are correct in saying consistent both ways, you just didn't get it. And near the end of what should have maybe finished this game, and this is another big turning point, but let's work our way to it first. The Steelers offense was humming for the most part in the especially first quarter and first half. In the first half summary, they had 163 yards on 30 offensive plays, 4 of 8 for 3rd down. They had 6 first downs. Let's see what else could I pick apart from this, but they overwhelmingly had all the time of possession outside about a minute or minute and a half of the first quarter. Russell Wilson was 11 of 13 for 147 yards. Jaylen Warren 5 for 27 with a 5.4 average. They were moving down the field. The problem was they weren't finishing any drives. You had to miss.
It's the same old story. They'd move between. It wasn't even between the 20s. Right. In this instance, they're moving over a 60-yard span of the field, and they're eating up yards, and they're getting first downs, and they're looking good. And then they do something dumb, right? Either Russ holds the ball too long and takes a sack that puts Boz in the position of having to kick a 58-yard field goal instead of what would have been maybe 51 or 48. Something they just keep shooting themselves in the foot, making bad decisions. As well as just not executing. Give the Browns credit. Look, they were fired up for this game. I said at the beginning, this is an important game to them for a variety of reasons. Their fans were fired up. Steelers fans did not take over that stadium. Despite, as the fact showed, when you were looking at tickets, they were dirt cheap, right?
Yeah. Well, part of that was the weather too.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to sit
Thursday
in it.
night. It's admitted it's Thursday night.
Yeah.
It's hard to travel from Pittsburgh and take probably Friday off and
there's
Thursday night
Cleveland
game.
fans. It happens in Pittsburgh too. It's Thursday night games are Monday night games maybe to a lesser extent, but Thursday night nobody wants to take that next day off from work, or if they have to work, they're probably selling tickets. So you're absolutely correct there. Weather is the equalizer because, like as you said, this play puts these, I don't believe, and I know George Pickens is saying his words. I know Myles Garrett's saying his little words. And in my heart of hearts, I don't think the Cleveland Browns are a good football team, right? I think it's fair to say that. But given the situations the Steelers gave them with field position, and I think a lot of this had to do with weather. I didn't understand the 58-yard field goal. That's, Boswell's
wouldn't have done
59.
it. Yeah, I wouldn't have done it. I'd have punted there.
But did you see what happens when Bjorquez punted too? There's only the one punt at the end of the game that's the shank by Corliss Waitman for like 16 yards.
Yeah.
That, I have a feeling
But there was no weather at that point, right? At the point when you're looking at that, I would have punted. The snow isn't coming down. You got maybe a little misty rain. The field is in fine condition. I'd have punted there, right? It's windy as hell.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Windy.
We saw the ball coast. Well, every single kickoff, we saw the ball sail. We saw it on the field goal too. It looks like, he's hit it just about perfect, swirling winds, and it was like, if it would have come down to it and the Steelers needed a field goal, they weren't kicking in that end. Again, I don't believe they were against it because you saw how the snow was coming in, hitting Winston in the face. He started with the visor, which I thought is hilarious because he got rid of it from the helmet. Just had to go without it because it was probably accumulating, steaming up, fogging up, whatever. But you have 9 plays, 44 yards, and a missed field goal. And then I was going to ask, is it too aggressive? Is Tomlin going for that 58-yarder too aggressive? Is going for it on 4th down, where at the Cleveland 38, too aggressive? Like, do you really punt there? Like, that's like a punt, and if it ends up sailing or whatever, they just bring it out. It's going to be a net 18 anyways. So I might not have as big a problem with that one. But throughout the game, it just felt like they weren't able to get these short yardage situations that they desperately needed. And that probably, between that and Cleveland being able to convert on their 4th downs, was the tail of the tape.
Absolutely. You had an offensive line in Cleveland, right? That's got a left tackle who barely plays. They've had a good offensive line, but now they have kind of a patchwork offensive line. They played better than our offensive. It's just the bottom line. I have been disappointed in the way our offensive line play has been throughout the year, but especially disappointed in pass protection, which they are just not good at right now. And when you consistently cannot get a yard, some of it could maybe land on play calling, but you should be able to get that push with the maulers that we're supposed to have, and they are not doing it. They're just not doing it. This is not the first time they've had a game where they just can't get that 1 yard, to get the first down. I appreciate the aggressive nature that Tomlin has, and I think that weather probably does play some impact in those decisions, trying to say, hey, I don't know that we're going to get any better off. As it turns out, both the 4th downs that they failed to convert are not what cost them, right? The defense stands up after those, and they don't, I don't think they gave up points on that first one either. But we can double check that. But I felt like, okay, didn't cost them, but they got to be able to get those. And they just couldn't. The tail of the tape was offensive line play and maybe to a certain extent defensive line play, and the Browns just played better.
And the Steelers the Browns had 3 for 11 on the first drive, 3 for 8, and then they allow a 12-play, 80-yard drive. I'm like, okay, their game script, this is working. I'm not worried about the rest of the game. And that's kind of a valid point to a certain degree because the Browns, third quarter, fumble and then a punt. They only had two drives, both of 3 plays apiece. But you go into halftime, you weren't feeling necessarily great about this game. You had the Browns scored that touchdown on that drive. They had another drive where they get a Dustin Hopkins 34-yard field goal. It's 10-3. And then that's the way you go in. And you're like, okay, well, it's only 7 points, but the Browns are getting the ball first to start the second half. And you're like, okay, let's not fold here. And you had the fumble by Cedric Tillman. Fumbles recovered by Deshaun, or punched out, I believe, by Deshaun Elliott, and then recovered by Dante Jackson. I'm like 25 and 26. I'm trying not to get them all. 24, 25, 26, these guys in the secondary, right? But the Steelers weren't able to capitalize on any of this, and it was yet another one of these deals. Jaylen Warren ends up falling just short. It's just everything was just short of what they needed. You could have probably taken any one of these plays and change the story just to just to kind of further emphasize like the aggressiveness. Like I didn't necessarily have as big a problem with this game as maybe a lot of other people. I do feel conditions definitely a factor. Yeah, both teams have to play in it, but it's a hindrance and it's also an advantage in some cases for either side.
Well, let's be clear. When
Yeah.
you're throwing the ball,
hmm
it is a benefit to the offense. If the passer can throw the ball correctly, the offense knows where they're going. The receivers know where they're going. Defense has to react on a slippery field.
Oh
They're
yeah.
going to react less effectively. So it is, but again, they took advantage of it. Our receivers couldn't seem to consistently get open, right? They even made comment on it. And it's hard for you to see, right, when you're watching on TV. But when Herb Street is making comments about the receivers not, for example, when Russ goes into a scramble drill, nobody's helping him, right? They're not running back to the ball. They're not breaking off their routes. They're not making the adjustments. It's a young room to a certain extent. And it's not like they performed overly badly, but man, there is a notable difference over, again, several games where there's periods of time where you just notice our guys are never getting open, but theirs are.
Yeah, that's a very good point. He's saying guys stopped, guys, I mean, just slipping and everything. If somebody's going to come on, they're going to be like, oh, it's all about the weather. Hey, look, there's a reason why they don't play Super Bowls in Cleveland, and Cleveland wants to build a dome so they can host one, right? It's because nobody's going to go and sit in this slop for thousands and thousands of dollars, and it doesn't end up being much of a game. If you go out there and you have like an all-pro quarterback or something like that, it's thrown for 5,000 yards, better hope he has somebody to hand the ball off to, and like it's gonna be one of those slugfests. We knew that this was kind of set up by the schedule makers to be a stumbling block in the first place, but there was still some hope that the Steelers, they hold at the beginning of the third quarter here. They don't get anything out of this, and yet it's another one of these drives that falls short. Jaylen Warren loses a yard. You have the defense does their job again. Like I said, 3 and out. And Bjorquez punts 39 yards from the 39. So that ends up being a touchback out to the 20. It's a net 19. It's another one of those things where the field position battle, but the Steelers consistently had these longer fields to drive, because at least the Browns were willing to punt it away. They weren't, even for the 2-win team, as desperate to just, punch in like a short yardage play. And on the few that they did, they ended up succeeding with. Now, the Steelers get the ball back here, and it ends up being a Boswell 28-yard field goal. Drive ends up kind of stalling again when there's a high snap. And I'm trying to think if this is still not the series yet where we get Justin Fields on the field. So it felt like pulling teeth, and it did, because it was the weather, obviously. But the defense, they come back and they give up 10 plays, 65 yards, starting out from the Cleveland's 35, because even special teams was some tough sledding and not necessarily best in coverage here either. They'd given up some big plays to a bunch of, backup tight ends, as, Al Michaels. I feel like Al Michaels got something in his coffee mug when he's doing these broadcasts anymore. Like, he just doesn't, his field of F's is barren, my friend, and he just doesn't give any. But yeah, I mean, it's disappointing from that aspect, because you were hoping that the defense can hold what hasn't been a very good Browns offense, and defense that both struggled in New Orleans just a few days earlier on the road. But then again, those were in all ideal conditions too, So all bets are off, and the Browns utilized it. I think they utilized it better than what Pittsburgh should have been able to.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the same thing I've been saying. The Browns did not, they converted 1 third down, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not looking at the stats in front of me, but I think they converted 1 third down, which was a critical one towards the end of the game.
Yes.
That kept the drive alive. But they converted every damn 4th down that they had, right? Anytime they went for it on 4th, they got it. The Steelers simply couldn't do the job on 4th down, even, when they had opportunities to do so, right? So the Browns just played a better game in the trenches than the Steelers did. And that's how a lot of AFC North football turns, right? Whoever wins the line of scrimmage wins the game. and the Browns won the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you on that. I get sick of like some of the talk, TJ Watt versus Myles Garrett. Very clearly Myles Garrett had a better matchup. But what you end up seeing on the next drive, well, I talked about the Nick Herbig getting yanked deal. And Nick gets his flowers very shortly after this because he comes in and he strips. The Steelers, I'm sorry. After the Winston scramble, the Steelers do have a drive of 7 plays, 69 yards for a touchdown. Justin Fields has a huge 30-yard scramble, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, somebody watched some film from the last game, and now you've got something going on. And bringing in Fields was kind of interesting. Of course, they go to use him again after this big play. And he also tries to hit George Pickens and got the roughing the passer call. But, man, I don't know. It was like there was a little bit of a spark, but I do think that the announcers, I think they skew some of the casual fans too.
Oh, God, yes.
I don't necessarily want to see Justin Fields. It's like, did they trust his arm? To what degree and in this weather? There was a lot of talk, like, why did they pull him and not have Russell Wilson there near the end of the game where you needed that first down on the 3rd and 4? And we're going to get to that. But in this situation, it was like, okay, this is something, let's try it. And it worked. You got 30 yards. He was a big component to this drive, going 7 plays, 69 yards. Nice. And then capped off by a 3-yard Jaylen Warren touchdown run. But you come right back, and so Warren, had missed on the previous series. This was the aforementioned, the grab when Winston goes and has a little bit of a scramble. The secondary does its job, but everyone forgot about the quarterback and like about, a yard and a half to go to goal. And he was able to escape and get over there and get across the goal line, which you couldn't even see now because everything was covered in snow. So I am crying a little spilled milk over that because it was just like, okay, they're not going to call this. They're not going to call some pass interference calls. They weren't calling a lot of stuff both ways. I'm sure Dan Moore probably, in fact, Dan Moore probably should have been flagged where Myles Garrett punched the ball out, or at least got his hand out. I didn't see it. He grabbed Russell's arm, and Russ didn't have a grip on the ball. The ball's probably solid as a rock. His fingers are cold, and it slips out, right? So he forces that. But man, Moore has got him all like up in his grill, up across around his neck, across his jersey and everything. I'm pretty sure if Garrett doesn't force something there, they might have been forced to throw some laundry on the ground. So again, live by the sword, die by the sword, right? But Herbig, he gets his revenge, comes back around, and boom, just nails Jameis Winston, strip sack. Finally, somebody beats this backup left tackle that's been the matchup all night with Herbig. And so I don't want to necessarily say I made the comment with Alex Highsmith, but I think Alex Highsmith, maybe a couple of those Chubb runs, maybe aren't in the same category. I feel Herbig is a far better pass rusher than he is against the run. Though he did have his moments in this game, he's still growing, right? Steelers get the football. Russ throws a dime to Calvin Austin. All of a sudden, the Steelers are up a point with about 6 minutes and 9 seconds is when the Browns offense takes the field and runs this first play following this, right? So this drive is pretty critical and ends up with Jameis Winston not being able to see or whatever. White jerseys in the snow coming down, threw it right to Dante Jackson like it was his receiver. And I told you, we were texting back and forth. I'm like, he's going to be good for one of these at some point. And it's like, LFG, dude, we've got 4 minutes and 22 seconds left. The Steelers have the ball. Run this down to 2-minute warning. Force Cleveland to use some timeouts. Escape, even though it's ugly conditions. 1 point. And what do we have here? We have a run play by Harris. Najee gets 3. Najee gets 3. Cleveland burns their timeout. 3:34. Justin Fields is in the game, and they decide to throw it deep. Now, there's glass half empty, glass half full with this, right? A lot of people are going to talk about play calling. Mike Pursuta nailed this on the post-game show. Nailed it without a doubt. He said, okay, you got Fields. Is Fields going to run? It's this RPO stuff. what you ended up with was the Cleveland Browns. They see number 2 here on the field. They're all focused. He's going to run. We're going to stop this. And you had George Pickens one-on-one with who? Not Denzel Ward, not Greg Newsome, but Martin Emerson. And it sure looked like Emerson got a hold of him a little bit. And there was a lot of that. Cordero Patterson, too, on the 2-point play. When they saw the replay afterwards, all over their jerseys, I don't know exactly if it's something where the referees just didn't feel that qualified. There's a lot of folks that usually don't talk about officiating, Charlie Batch included, saying there might have been something there. They won't come out and ever say it because they just don't. They're not those type of guys to say that or to blame officiating or anything like that. And that's not exactly what I'm trying to blame for the entirety of the game. But in this moment when they could have closed it out, they were looking for the knockout punch. This should have been a knockout punch. Could it have been a little bit better of a ball from Fields? Oh, absolutely. Did they trust him to throw? Obviously. Did they get the matchup they wanted? Yes. But the glass half empty side of me says 3rd and 4, you could have ran the clock a little more. You could have tried to play it for another, maybe. I don't know if you want to go necessarily you're not in 4-down territory there because you're on your own 30-yard line.
Yeah. Here's the thing. It's all percentages, right? I don't care if that's the matchup they got and they wanted it. It's still a low percentage throw, right? Whenever you're throwing deep, and I don't care that Pickens makes most of those catches and is incredible. It's still a low percentage throw. You're going to miss more than you make, right? There should have been an outlet. If they're going to try and fool him because they're stacking the box because they're thinking he's going to run, there should have been another outlet that gets them 4 yards, right? That's the thing. I don't think that was the point in time to try and put the nail in the coffin. Mm-hmm. Because guess what? Just getting the first down probably puts the nail in the coffin. So I really question that decision, whether that was the play call and that's what you do. It's situational, right? Understand the context of the game you're playing. Right now, if you get a first down, you know they're going to burn all their timeouts. They're going to be out of timeouts.
2-minute warning is going to probably
2-minute warning is going to be gone. And you're going to, if you get one more first down, now you're in victory position, right? Just get the first down. That's all they should have been trying to do there.
I wonder if that was the only, I wonder if there was anything else on that. I'd have to I've rewatched some of the plays. That was one I have to say I didn't get clearly a replay of. I didn't see anybody else. I thought maybe Freiermuth or somebody might have squeaked out there, maybe not wide open. Why not leave Russ on the field? Russ probably connects that ball, but then again, he probably doesn't get that matchup. So I understand both of those, but it's like, yeah, it's 4 yards. Why don't they run the ball there? Well, very obviously, you've had mixed success with it, and you've had Fields stopped, and you've had an inability to even get 1 yard otherwise in this game.
Yeah, I understand why they don't run there.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing. The only thing that's like I'm not really upset with any of the play calls from like Arthur Smith. I don't know. The players have to execute. I don't know if that was a Justin Fields read. It was like, if you have this matchup, take it. Like you could put this blame probably on several people. Even I have given it to everybody, including the referees. You know what I mean? So you can assign so much different blame to that. The thing that happens next is what really screws the pooch, man, is Corliss Waitman shanks a punt because he hasn't kicked all day long. He hasn't had a single punt up until this point. I was worried about this. I was worried about a snap. I was worried about just exactly what happened. 15 yards, kicking into whatever wind. I almost feel like it would have been better if that pass would have been picked off if they threw it down the field, because it was at least backed up and got the field position. It's like, but you can't give the Browns the ball back at the 30, but you're probably also not thinking that they're just going to try and go for a TD here and not have Hopkins kick it. You saw his shoe off on the sideline. They were trying to warm his foot up or whatever craziness they had going on.
Well, you could tell they weren't comfortable with that,
yes.
Right? Even when it was maybe going to be 4th and 2, and I know that's where you're getting at. Do you take the 5-yard penalty? Which, by the way, the question, I get why that's what the penalty they called. We all thought it was going to be grounding, which is a totally different situation. But, if it's 3rd and 7 versus 4th and 2, they were going for it on 4th and 2. And maybe it's in your head as Tomlin and the rest of the group going, well, we can't stop them on 4th down. They get it every damn time, but we can stop them on 3rd, and maybe they'll be a little further back. But That's the point. That's the only third down they convert the whole damn game, and it's at that critical juncture.
I will disagree with everybody understanding. They could have thrown multiple, just because it's illegally touched by a lineman, I don't think negates the fact that it's intentional grounding. The criteria for the intentional grounding isn't that there's no eligible receiver, he's not outside the tackle box, and it didn't reach the line of scrimmage. All the criteria is there. It's intentional grounding, loss of down, decline the other penalty. The other penalty's bullshit, man. It was just, and then they're standing around and they're trying to figure out, well, wait a minute, did he accept this? Did he not accept this? And you got to come over and try and speak. I guarantee Tomlin, it doesn't look like he loses his cool ever, right? He seems pretty statuesque, but I guarantee the words that were coming out of his mouth probably weren't very nice at the same time. He's probably like, well, how the hell is this not intentional grounding? They lose it down. They lose a few more yards. You go to fourth down. It's probably a different ball game there. Then on top of this, Brian, you have an exchange. You trying to pass off. I think it was Jerry Jeudy again, right? Between Minkah Fitzpatrick and Joey Porter. And you're right. They can't figure out. They're sliding around. But he goes down to the ground. It doesn't look like anybody touches him. There's not a whistle that I heard, at least from TV. You can hear all the idiots. They're drunk and banging on like the metal in the stadium. Hopefully they'll need a new stadium because these idiots are going to beat it apart. And that was driving me crazy on the whole broadcast. But nobody touched him down, and Beanie comes over like he doesn't know. It's like he's playing it as though it's still a live ball, which is smart, because then if nobody ends up touching the guy and he walks into the end zone, everybody's gonna be like, well, boneheads, what did you end up doing? It's the same thing that happened with Josh Allen in Buffalo last year. Nobody touched him, and then he kept going. He did his little fake with the slide. I didn't have a problem with that. I had more of a problem that they tacked on more yards and made this more of a gimme. It went from the 9 to the 2. Well, actually, hold on a second. Before that, let's see, 29. Yeah, down to the 9, or down to the 7. I'm sorry, it was at the 14 and it went to the 7, half the distance. So it would have been first and goal, or first and 10 from the 14-yard line, and instead it goes to first and goal from the 9, and then Chubb gets 7 yards, and then the other 2 yards for the touchdown. That's where you end up at 24-19, the 2-point conversion, incomplete. And the Steelers have 50 seconds. They only burned one of their timeouts during some of this. Browns were able to chew up a little bit of clock. I'm not sure who you place this on, because it's like you're asking for kind of a miracle. The Steelers have it at the 36. They get a couple plays running here. They use their last timeout. And then they burned off a little bit of the clock with just the 9-yarder to Freiermuth. You went down from 50 seconds to 29, and then 29 to 23, only 6 seconds. So Russ is giving it away and being smart pretty quick. You have the Hail Mary at the end. You have whatever shenanigans with Pickens, going, basically fighting, and they fight off the field, and I don't know who's at fault there, and I don't really care. Some people are making a meal out of that, and that's all they're interested in asking about in a game it's bad blood. There's teams are rivals, and that's how it ends up. It ends, and there's people making fun of it too. It's like, well, this is the Hail Mary, and the ball's there. Where's the receivers? Doesn't look like anybody jumps. I don't know. There's going to be people that are going to blame Mike Tomlin. They're going to say, well, he always plays down to these different teams. We knew that this is a tough situation. Just the situation itself. You add the layer, you make it a divisional game, and the Browns defense too. I mean, you still got guys like Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward that you got to play against. We said their front seven was good.
They're not. I mean, yes, they're 2-8. Part of the reason they're 2-8 is because they had a crap quarterback for the first 6 games of the season or 5 games of the season, and was terrible. Jameis Winston, he's not, as much as they were, asking Jameis to turn around so they could kiss his posterior all night. He's not all that, but he is definitely an improvement over Deshaun Watson. There's just no question about it. And, the defense has been in bad situations. And I said this in the pregame. This is still a team that beat the Ravens too, right? And probably beat them just as handily. It's not the same. throw records out whenever it's AFC North football. This is not the Steelers playing down to a bad team. This is AFC North football, especially in weather like that. Again, forget it. Just throw everything out the window. You don't know what's going to happen. They had their opportunities to win the game. They had their opportunities to put the game away. They failed to do so, right? And when it comes down to that, it's really, I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record. It's execution, and the Browns at the line of scrimmage outperformed the Steelers, and that's why they won the game.
Yep. I'm really trying to not be emotional, and in an emotional way, I mean, like, I'm disappointed, but I'm angered and frustrated. Cleveland fans are usually among the worst that roam the face of the planet. They'll run their mouths. It's like the meme with the guy on the podium and he's got his mouth on the metal and he's in third place. That's the Cleveland Browns in this situation. It's like, okay, you guys got the job done. Congratulations to you. I think it's going to be a different story when this game comes back to Pittsburgh. A lot of people calling it a trap game. Brian, we've always defined trap game as looking to the next one. And I don't think they're looking at the next one because this is a Thursday night game. They're riding high.
Division game. It's a division game. Yeah. They're not looking. They can't look to the next one. And if they were, shame on them. But I don't believe that for a second. This isn't a trap. Trap games are a myth. This is not a trap game. This is just AFC North football. Division game. Teams that know each other very well. The Browns are playing better than they were earlier in the season. Forget it. It is what it is, right? I'm more concerned now with how do they handle Joe Burrow, and can they score enough?
Well, that's something to take. Yeah, it is a takeaway from this game, though, because you're just like, oh, they're never going to get anything done, and all of a sudden they put up 14. The defense comes alive and gets some turnovers. All of those things are still a possibility. So it's not like earlier. I just got so irritated with like I like Herb Street. Al Michaels has been a lost cause in all these Thursday night games.
Al Michaels can't figure out the difference between DeMonte Casey and Beanie Bishop.
Yeah. But that's not the only spot that he's at. It's like, oh, look at this, Jameis Winston. It's not like they benched the other guy. And even when Watson got hurt, Winston was made QB3 inactive as the emergency quarterback. Now they had to backtrack on that versus having Dorian Thompson-Robinson as their backup because, that blew up in their face real quick.
Well, and he also can't even figure who's on which team because he kept crediting Delpit for stuff that Herbig did.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said, I was like, let me grab that's why I got my bug here. I'm like, I don't have anything in mind. There's no bourbon or anything, but I would like to know what the spirit of choice is for Al Michaels on a cold day in Cleveland. So,
I think what part of his contract is, look, I'm going to be 2 sheets to the wind at the end of every game, and I don't care.
And he's making a lot of money doing it.
That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, all the better for him, man. It's, the Steelers destroyed the time of possession. They had the ball 35 minutes in this game. It's sad to see. They did 368 yards, all the things that they did right, but you get to near the end of this game, right? And when it's 1918, you would think when the Steelers defense only gives up 18 points to the Cleveland Browns, that should be enough to seal the deal and get the job done. And unfortunately, it's not. They take a loss. They take a conference loss. They take a division loss. The silver lining is this one doesn't hurt as much. They're not going to be facing Cleveland in any kind of tiebreakers. So as long as they are able, I think you said straight split all the way through the AFC. But
I probably did.
Yeah, there's still, they're two wins away from 10, 3 away from 11. And you've got games coming up, 2 with the Bengals, a rematch with the Browns. And then you have the Eagles, Chiefs, Ravens. I mean, it's tough, but I don't think it's not like this isn't a team that I see losing out or anything like that, or going
I don't,
500 on the way out. I still think they're going to collect a few wins here. Yeah. What's that?
They are going to collect a few wins. They might go 500 over the last set of games, but they're going to get enough. They're going to get wins, right? We have to be Chargers fans on Monday night. But what I think this loss does to them more than anything else is the dream of the first round bye, which was, a fleeting dream. That's probably not happening. Right.
And to be realistic, did you see Kansas City's schedule?
Yeah. I
They're
mean,
just
you'd have needed to win out to do that, and I don't think anybody really thought. I mean, even when we kind of ran the schedule at the end of the last show, I still have Philly as a loss because they just can't. They don't. They've never won in Philly. They never win in Philly. They're not going to win in Philly. That's just the way it goes. you know, I can't until they do it. I can't pick them to win that game, right?
yeah. Three of the last five will be at home. They
Yeah.
split between home and road. They'll go to Cincinnati on a little bit of a mini bye. The Bengals are already on
On a full bye.
Yeah, on a full bye. So Kansas City Chiefs, let's see, taking a look at the rest of their schedule, as I say, and they have the Panthers, the Raiders, Chargers, Browns, Texans, Steelers, and Broncos. So they've got a mixed bag there. And then if you took a look at the Buffalo Bills schedule, everything loading very slowly on my machine today. Thank you. I was asking
as
Brian
it's loading,
White.
let's talk about that. They could lose to the Broncos, which they should have lost once before.
Mhm.
They could lose to the Chargers. They could, in theory, because at this point, I think anybody could lose to the Browns. Would be nice. I don't know. Is the Browns game in Kansas City or in Cleveland?
I'll have to look. I got the Bills up. 49ers
Okay.
at the Rams, at the Lions, Patriots, Jets at the Patriots. So the last three games,
They'll lose the Lions
it's
game.
division.
Probably.
It's divisional games. They have to play. Kansas City Chiefs have to play at the Browns. So the end of their schedule is at Cleveland, home against the Texans, at Pittsburgh, at Denver. That's not necessarily the easiest schedule, but it looks like it favors the Buffalo Bills a lot more to be in the driver's seat there, especially with the head-to-head tiebreaker. As much as you hate to say it, I still think the Steelers, they could be in the driver's seat here for the AFC North. They went 5-1 last year with the quarterbacks that they had. They played defense. I think this defense is better. I think you have a couple of fluke things with the weather. I don't think Corliss Waitman punts a 16-yard punt if it's better weather.
I agree, for sure.
Different conditions. Maybe Tomlin doesn't go for it on one of these fourth downs. Maybe your offensive line is better run blocking when they're not sliding around in the middle of the field. It is they are grass conditions in Cleveland. If you've never played any kind of sports in the elements like this, even on turf though, the snow gets trapped and it's slick. You saw guys change it. You have to change cleats because if guys are wearing flats or even turf shoes, and you'll wear turf shoes because it's like a putting green on these NFL surfaces, that stuff gets trapped down and it's like ice and you're getting pushed around like you're on roller skates and stuff like that. Again, I want to just emphasize, I'm not making any excuses, but this is for the crowd of people that want to fire everyone and all of a sudden are unhappy. This is an 8-3 football team that's still in the lead of the AFC North. And there's any one of these things that could have went a different way that could have made them a 9-2 team. And it should give you more optimism going forward. It's tough to say optimism after a loss, but the defense the offense didn't completely fold, and there was a number of different conditions and things that could have went differently in these games. It's the way it's played. It's just how it goes. And at some point, you couldn't be so unrealistic to think that they weren't going to drop a game to someone along the way. People are looking at this and going, "Oh, well, they're going to drop this." It's Thursday night. It's on the road, and it's against a division opponent. We knew that back in August. That's why it was tough for me, even though I got upset. I think the biggest thing I got upset about, Brian, there were three things in this game that most got upset, and I've covered all of them already. One was the Steelers get down 18-6, and I'm like, what the F? And I am just mad at this point, right? And the ball is getting turned over, and nothing is going their way. And then you had the Jameis Winston scramble with Herbert getting grabbed. You had the hands to the face to Cam Hayward. But then at the end, I'm just sitting there and I'm just astonished with the way the NFL all year. I tweeted this out last night. I don't know if you saw it, but I'm like, that'll probably be the only NFL game all year I watch that had no offensive holding penalties and no pass interference calls. It just seems statistically improbable given the elements of new linemen or guys that are weaker at the position for the Steelers, and likewise a guy that's playing out of position with the Browns, and the way that you have other players pitching in and helping was just and speaking of pitching in and helping, Connor Hayward, it runs in the family with Cam too. Your dude got a false start on the one special teams play, and I'm just like, man, just can't catch a break. That was Boswell. That was the field goal he ended up making and ended up pushing it back to 48. But it was like, Connor, you're trying to use somebody as like a fullback. You're trying to have an identity as a running football team. In order to do that, you got to be able to get the short yardage situation. But I don't understand this. It came into the playbook, I think, finally, like Canada put it in there and once again throw it out the window. But Pickett used to get right up there, line of scrimmage, under the center, push the pile, boom. Get that extra half yard to a yard you need in short yardage situation. They're unwilling to do that with Russell Wilson. I think they only did it once this year, maybe with Justin Fields.
Well, they've definitely done it more than they did last year, or not more than they did last year, but more than they may have done in the past. The problem here, and I understand why they weren't going to go for like a brotherly shove or try and sneak it in. They couldn't control the line of scrimmage. Cleveland's getting penetration on everything,
but
so they're not going to get it.
Not going to get it. That's the only thing I don't like is shotgun, and I
hate that too.
And when I have less of a problem when it's shotgun, third and whatever with Jaylen Warren in the backfield, but when it's Najee's not like that same kind of downhill lightning runner that he plods. Jaylen Warren is quicker than a hiccup. That's the guy you want. He's going to be at the line of scrimmage right there. But again, they tried that and it didn't work either.
Here's where you start to see Najee's weaknesses when they occur. If you've got Najee, 9 yards back, right, but you're trying to run this zone blocking scheme and you're not blocking it up effectively, and they're overloading and they're getting penetration, he's got nowhere to go. He's not that shifty, right? He's a power guy. And I agree with you. Jaylen Warren may be a little shiftier than that. Plus, he hits the hole cleaner and quicker than Najee tends to do. But look, they just could not keep Cleveland out of the backfield. They just couldn't keep them from getting penetration, and it was problematic. The best runs they had were misdirection, and they couldn't even consistently do that. They seemed, in many cases, again, to be sort of the old complaints we'd had about Matt Canada, where it was obvious what they were doing. They were so.
I'll agree with that.
Repetitive.
Yeah. There was some repetition that wasn't necessary there. And again, trying to get open downfield. Russ holding on to the ball a little long. There's some lessons to take out of this. I feel like this is a learning moment for them. I don't think that it's going well. I very highly think they're think the same way we do. If you turn one of these plays, they're watching the film and they're like, we do this a little differently, or we execute this a little differently. Who's going to stop us? And hopefully they get that figured out. And not only do they get it figured out, hopefully you've got the talent and you've got the personnel to figure it out. I heard somebody talking about like Mike Williams and him not being out there. He's got to get this guy on the moving train, maybe a few extra days off, gets ingrained more with the playbook. But again, on the post game, Pursuta, Batch, they're talking about, that's a big play receiver. And where are you going to use them when you don't have time to make those big plays, or you don't have time to throw the football, or guys aren't getting open? I mean, some of the catches by Pickens, absolutely tremendous. That ball to Calvin Austin, tremendous. There were some plays in this game that really made you feel like that, the Steelers could still compete with everybody out there. And again, the Browns, Myles Garrett, Dalvin Tomlinson, some of these guys that are on that defense, Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit, they've got guys that are on that defense. The defense, if I had to say, is probably better than what Baltimore has got out there. And when you put the elements out there, anything goes, ball ends up on the ground with both sides. So that's about all I got to say.
The next game is going to be very telling. I mean, I hate to say it's a must-win game, but it kind of is. They need to win this game against the Bengals because, they don't need to lose 2 games in a row. They need to get this win in, especially going into the last bits of this schedule where, it's, again, another trio of, going into a Wednesday game, even, a shorter week. They really need this win. I think they can do it. But man, they gotta figure some stuff out. And they've got to figure out how to unleash TJ, right? I get it. Everybody's sending 2, 3, 4 guys on it, but they tried to make a big deal about that in the broadcast. And guess what? It didn't come across right because what they showed was out of 11 pass attempts, he was doubled 4 times. Where the hell was he the other 7, right? Yes, they're getting the ball out quick, but they got to figure out a way to get TJ unleashed because he has been noticeably a non-entity for like 3 games now.
Yeah, and the love affair with Myles Garrett and all the sacks and whatever he had, that dude disappeared for 4 straight games too. Like, toward the end of October and beginning of this month, like that stuff. It's like through one ear and out the other. You have these spells, but he consistently does it year to year. That drives me crazy. Dan Moore has bottled him up before, but it just was not a good look for him. Like Dan Moore was like out of his. We just got done I wouldn't say singing his praises necessarily, but giving him some credit, like he's not complete, a complete bum. And
here's the one thing I will say
Thursday night.
I will say this. Tomlin said, we have to make plans to give him help. And I don't think they gave him help the vast majority of the night.
No. There wasn't a whole lot of anything with the tight ends or chipping with the running backs or anything to help slow down in much the same way that they were. The Browns were throwing everybody in the kitchen sink at TJ Watt on every single play. That guy had to go through like at least 2 people. Every single guy was coming off. And I mean, I wanted to say, didn't we just say that that might've been the Ravens game too? The same exact thing. Like,
oh, absolutely. The Ravens game, it was much worse than this game. They let him free, and they could because they're getting the ball out fast, right? When Winston was being decisive and it's a 1, 2, 3 count and the ball's gone, there's very little that any of them can do, right? That's the difference between why we have 4 sacks or 5 sacks, whatever they got against us. Russ is holding the ball. It ain't coming out in 3-4 seconds. When he was releasing it very quickly, they weren't getting at him. Right? It's just a difference in execution. Cleveland played a better game and won the game.
Yeah. And again, was it great? No, I think both teams played pretty sloppy. And it's just
in those conditions, that's expected, right?
Yeah. Sloppy football. Both teams had their bright moments. So it's, it's frustrating. It's disappointing because it's not a W. You can't win them all. So I'll take it for what it is. We already went into this one expecting it. It would have been nice to come out with something different than the expectations. Again, we sat here just the other day and said, hey, here's another one of these games where it's like, I don't see how they could possibly give this up. And then they give it up. So, Brian, thanks for joining me, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, always a pleasure. We appreciate you. We appreciate all of you that are watching or listening wherever you may be. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, leave a rating or review wherever you may be. We'll see if we have something early next week, but if not, we'll be back for that Bengals game preview ahead of Thanksgiving and Turkey Day. Always one of my favorite holidays because I refuse to put my Christmas tree up until we have Thanksgiving. There is another holiday between Halloween and Christmas, so let's celebrate that one first before we get to all the festivities. But then Tina Rivers, she said if she was podcast ready or whatever yesterday, podcast. I like how you said that. Broadcast. She's like, I want to start my airing of grievances early. I'm like, whoa. This is going to be the 23rd.
Too soon.
November 23rd.
Grievances.
You got another month. You've got to wait. We cannot air Festivus for the rest of us. You got to wait for Festivus.
I have plenty of those to do, but not yet.
Not as many this year, though, to be honest.
Well, I have plenty of grievances, but they just aren't all with the Steelers.
Oh, well, that's fair enough, dude. You want to know my grievance? This is a bonus content. Our 2%ers, the rest of you that are still hanging around here before we sign off. Car's covered in snow this morning. Have to get up earlier. Kid has band practice. She's in band before school starts. So it's like she's got to be there almost an hour earlier than usual, right? Which means I got to get up earlier. My car's covered in snow. You think I could find my snow scraper, my ice scraper, my brush, or anything like that this morning? And this is the good snow, too. It was almost like one of those things. It's the good snow. It's the best ever. You'll never see snow like this. But it's the packing snow, right? And I'm just like, I can't get this shit off my windshield. I need to get you to school. Oh, man. So just think, there was so much more of that. I almost went to Cleveland. And my daughter's 11, and I'm like, I am not taking you to a Steelers-Browns game in Browns Stadium with those fans in 30-degree weather with the snow coming down. They had a winter weather advisory. You know, dude, that I have growing up in Northeast Ohio, just over the Pennsylvania state line, I have very many friends and family that are Browns fans, and we always get after each other on a lot of stuff. And my like one of my best friends, Eric, he was just like, he lives like 40 minutes from downtown, and he wouldn't go to that game and sit there in the weather, etc. And then he had the same exact feelings. Like, if you think that we're like complaining or whatever, you had a roughing the passer on Justin Fields, and they're like, all of a sudden the referees are in the Steelers corner. I'm like, what? Because they finally made a call this game, like something.
And that was a very clear call. I mean, that was one they couldn't ignore, right? I mean,
and then
just couldn't.
The Russell Wilson TD to Kelvin Austin emerging, looking like, he might be a viable threat in this offense. He continues to grow. I like this, but he goes, Browns are brownsing. And it was like, I don't talk any smack in between those games, because it's just like, I don't want to, the saying goes, if you dish it out, you better take it. Well, I just don't dish it out. I don't want, it's a waste of energy. It's a waste of breath. This is now in the rear view. I'm done with it. We'll move ahead. Next game, Cincinnati, after all the Turkey Day games that are going to look like, was it Cooper Rush versus Danny DeVito?
Point,
and
all I care about is Saturday.
Yeah, well, that's
all I care about
too.
is Saturday. They better win that game, otherwise this is going to be a long bye week.
Yeah, we're talking about Ohio State,
the Ohio State University.
Ohio State. Well, we will
needs
see.
To beat Indiana.
Yeah, well, Brian, hopefully it caps off your birthday. I think we were at the same point last year, and you lost all of them. So knock on wood, my friend. Happy birthday to you again, folks. Once again, thank you for joining us, supporting Steel City Underground, wherever you may be watching or listening from. My name is Joe Kuzma. His name is Mr. Brian E. Roach. Until next time, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.